So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to ace GMAT Sentence correction. My name is Rajat Sidana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be a main host today. I'm going to be a co-host today. Your main hosts today are my colleagues Shraddha and Stacy. Shraddha and Stacy are sentence correction experts, or Shraddha is one of the oldest experts at e-GMAT, and they're going to make sure that you learn the famous meaning-based approach that e-GMAT pioneered a decade back. And you not only learn that approach, you also learn how to apply it to some of the most challenging questions that the test is likely to throw at you. In addition to learning that approach, you're going to really understand what the hell does this meaning actually mean in GMAT sentence correction. You'd also understand why we say GMAT sentence correction is more of a test of meaning and logic rather than it being a test of grammar over here. So overall, a very, very application-focused webinar. Now, we have one other colleague, Sandeep, who's a GMAT strategy expert. And if you have questions on your GMAT strategy, which are pertinent to how we're going as we're progressing through in the webinar, so Sandeep will make sure that those questions get answered. So overall, this is a very application-focused webinar. We'll solve some very difficult questions over here. Your brains will get racked. You really just say, "Hey, man, SC is simple if it's just grammar," but no, unfortunately, it isn't. It's going to be about logic. It's going to be about meaning. For those of you who love logic, would have a ton of fun because you'd recognize, hey, acing GMAT sentence correction is actually very logical. You don't have to memorize a ton of grammar rules over there. But to make sure that that you guys are well prepared for this webinar, we did send a few video lessons your way. One was around verb ing modifiers. The second was around verb ed phrases. If you've not gone through these two lessons, go through these lessons. They are a part of your free trial. If you're a free trial student, if you're a paid student, they're of course a part of your paid course. One of the few lessons, and one of the 87 lessons that you have in the paid course. So as long as you've gone through these two, I think you'd be fine during this webinar. We also have some upcoming free webinars. We have a free webinar on number properties. That's tomorrow again. In this webinar, we focus on divisibility and remainders, and we go from answering the simplest question in remainders to we end up answering actually the most challenging questions. So this is a very build-up focused webinar where we even if you just know the basics about remainders, we help you go from there to be able to solve the most challenging data sufficiency questions. So again, definitely register for that if you've not registered for it. And then we have an RC webinar that is just exactly a week from now. Again, if are you worried if GMAT RC is what haunts you, then in this webinar we demonstrate how by following some reading strategies you improve your comprehension. Once you improve your comprehension, excelling in RC becomes a very simple thing. Again, you don't need to be a voracious reader to ace GMAT RC. Let me hide this. With that, let's kind of get to know you guys a bit better. With regards to the target GMAT score, I have a big group in that 730 to 760, but 55% of you are in that group over here. Very similar number in the 710, 720 or 770 plus. And then we have about 15% of you in the 600 to 700 bucket. Thank you for that. And then when you plan to take the test, the biggest group over here is those who haven't taken a date, and then we have almost a similarly sized set of people who have more than 45 days before their GMAT, and about 30% give or take in that 0 to 45 day bracket. Now the beauty of this this webinar is that even if you have just 15 days before your webinar, whatever we talk about, it can make an impact in your SC ability in as little as essentially 3 days or so. So with that, let's go right into the webinar pane over here. As you go in the webinar pane, you will see a presentation which says sentence correction, and then below the presentation, you will see what we call as a Q&A or a question and answer pod. If during the session you have any question, please put that question in the Q&A pod, and either Shraddha or Stacy, whosoever is not presenting, will ensure that that question gets answered. If that question's about GMAT strategy, then Sandeep will make sure that that question gets answered. Okay. Before we get to the crux of the webinar and before I pass on the controls to Shraddha and Stacey, I'm going to really talk about why should you aim for that score of 730 or higher. Most of you are aiming for that score. About 70+% of you are aiming for that score. The three reasons why you should get to that score. One is if you're aiming for that top B school, which I hope most of you are, then they now need that score of 730 or higher. Okay. The second reason is if you're looking for scholarship money, and B schools do give out a ton of scholarship money. Majority of that goes to people who get to that score of 730 plus. And the third is that delta in total earning. The score of 730 or higher could be worth $500,000 or more over a 10-year period to you guys. So again, it really pays to score high on the GMAT. And again, here are some trends with regards to how median scores have been moving for top schools. The two things that you would observe, one is in this bracket, most of these scores are around the 730 mark. The second thing is no Harvard, no Stanford there. Why? Because even in 2014, they were there. In fact, if you look at the stats during the 5-year period, for median scores increased for 23 out of 25 top schools. For the 24th one, they actually remained the same. They only decreased for one school, and this is despite the fact that there was a 15% decline in test-taking population during this period. And in 2020, 2021 cycle, we actually, for the first time, we have an increase in applicants to business schools. So we do expect this trend to actually continue over here. There are certain schools such as Sloan and Columbia where upwards of 80% of the incoming class, and these are two schools that give these stats, they have a score of 700 or higher. So essentially what these schools are telling is, you either get that score of 700 or higher, or you better be a son of a sheikh if you don't have that score. And this is something which is, whatever happens in the top 25, the second group, which is 26 to 50, they kind of follow that, and you see the biggest 5-year changes over here. These are 26 to 60 schools, and you see some of the biggest changes during this time. Okay, so this is statistical data. Here's some anecdotal data, and we have a ton of anecdotal data on our YouTube channel. And in fact, we're inviting some of these students to do live webinars on our YouTube channel. So Nishant, who's one of our former students, rejected by TAC when he had a score of 690 in round 2. So and then when he got to a 740, he actually got scholarships from Columbia and a full ride from Ohio Fisher. So when he was rejected by TUC, he reached out to them and said, why did you reject my candidacy? They said, hey, we like your profile. Your GMAT score is not up to the mark. This was explicitly told to him. Pravi, again, one of our former students, didn't receive a single interview invite when she applied with a score of 680. As soon as she updated that score to 740, received about 5 interview invites. She had a total of about $280K of scholarship money, including an admit to Kellogg. Krishnakanth applied to 15 schools and was rejected by 15 schools when he had a 680, then improved his score to 720, applied in round 3 to another set of 5 schools, got a full ride from each one of the schools. So essentially his application remained the same. It was just his GMAT score that made a difference. He did a wonderful session in January, if you can find that on our YouTube channel, where he talks about how he charted down his path, how he faced rejections, how he kept himself motivated, and essentially how he's now gotten a job at Amazon. Bottom line is, GMAT score, contrary to what you may believe, there's just enough data to say that GMAT score is way more important today, and it has been for the last 5 to 6 years than it has been in the first decade of 21st century. The second reason why you want to do that is scholarship. USB schools give out about $350 million worth of scholarship money. European B schools between 40 and 50 million. And based on our research, more than half this money goes to students who get to that score of 730 or higher. Again, this is data that we have because EGMAT has got about $45 million worth of scholarship every year. So we get enough of a statistical sample to make these inferences that about 55% of money goes to people who score 740 or higher. Pretty much all of it goes to people who get to that score of 780 or higher. Okay, which means if you do the math right, if you get that score of 740 or higher, this is an median scholarship amount that you should be getting. Some of you actually will get full rides depending on which schools you apply to and depending on the profiles that you have. And there are 2 factors that decide your scholarship. One is your GMAT score. The second is your likability during the interview. Again, anecdotal data over here. Mansi, one of our former students, got into Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, INSEAD, and Kellogg. She went to Harvard. She got about $90,000 worth of scholarship. Victor got a full ride from Ross and Keenan Flagler. In fact, a few of our students with 760 got full rides from Ross and a bunch of other schools as well. Kong Bui scored a 760, got a full ride from 5 different schools. He studied at Ohio Fisher, where he not only got a full ride, he actually got $1,700 per month as stipend to study. So he got paid to study at Ohio Fisher. Nishant and Pravi and KK, we've already talked about that. And again, when you see these YouTube icons, you can watch their interview. When you see this GMAT Club icon, when you get the PDF, you can click on this and watch their success stories. And a few students have some very interesting examples. So Ayush got a 710, got an interview invite from Ross and Columbia, connected really well during the interview, and was hoping to secure an admit, but both these schools waitlisted him. So I reached out to the outcome and said, hey, what happened? I thought, you really connected really well. I thought I was a really good fit. Both these schools told him, yes, you are a fit. Your profile's there. We like you, but your GMAT score is not high enough. So he prepared again. He improved that GMAT score to 750. Didn't even apply again. He was still on that wait list. He just updated that score, converted that wait list to scholarships, to admits with about $90,000 worth of scholarship. Similarly, just this year, we've done this live session early on where Dipinti, who scored a 730, applied to a bunch of lower ranked schools, including Tuck, was waitlisted by 3 other schools, Darden, Duke, and Ross. But so that was kind of a warning sign to her. She improved that score from 730 to 760. We kind of created a hyper specific plan for her, and she updated that score. And based on that updated score, Tuck, which is the highest ranked school among these schools, not only offered her an admit, but also offered her $50K scholarship over there. So this one's already done. This is on our YouTube channel. So this was on 2nd of February over here. So bottom line is your GMAT score is way more important today than it has ever been. And if you go to our YouTube channel, you can see 140 such instances. Actually, I think right now about 145. It's the world's largest collection of GMAT and MBA success stories anywhere. And this is a quote by John Fuller, who's admission director at a former admissions director at Ross. He says, hey, someone with a 770 is way more likely to get a financial award. Why? Because the school wants to buy that high GMAT score. Even in a GMAT optional world, we've seen this play out very, very well. So the third reason why people want to do this is the delta in total earnings over a 10-year period. So to do this, I'm going to compare 2 schools, Babson and MIT. Both these schools are about 20 miles away. They're in the New England area. 70% of graduates from both these schools get job within the New England area. And so arguably they have access to similar sort of employment opportunities. Now Babson, a graduate from Babson gets about $95,000 or $96,000 as base salary and about $10,000 as sign-on bonus. Usually they don't get sign-on equity. MIT, a lot higher. In fact, they get about sign-on equity about 40K or so, which is not included over here. But even if you consider the delta to be 45K, why? Because you're not going to get this bonus every year. You're not going to change your job every year, and you multiply it over a 10-year period. The delta between these 2 schools is about $500,000 or so 450K. Now, your GMAT score is not the only thing that matters, but if you don't have a high enough GMAT score, even when you have that profile, you might not get into MIT. All right, with that, there are 3 reasons why you should aim for that 730 score. I just want to give you those 3 reasons before I call in Stacy to start with the core of the webinar. Now, for those of you who still need a study plan, we help you define a study plan for that 730 score. Where we tell you, okay, what milestones you should aim for given your strengths and weaknesses, how much time you should need, and what metrics you should track to make sure that you're moving towards that 730 course. So if you need a study plan, click on the first link, get a personalized study plan, and book a slot over here. As you do that, you may be facing issues such as timing. You may be stuck at 700. You may need a high verbal score or so, where your verbal score is stuck. Click on the appropriate area. You'd be paired with an appropriate expert over here. And you'd see a case study where we've helped a student who's been stuck in because of the same issues that you're stuck in. Okay, book a slot, and that's about it. On the other hand, if you're an EGMAT student, you should already have that. You make sure that you have that because you have unlimited access to this tool, and make sure that you attend the onboarding sessions, which we do twice every week. Okay, with that, Stacy, over to you. I'm going to mute myself.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Stacy Trepanier. I'm one of the sentence correction experts here on the EGMAT team. I want to do a pulse check, make sure everybody can hear me out there. So please let me know by clicking yes or no in that yes/no poll. I see we've got about 178 people, 177, we just lost one, in this webinar. So I am all about participation. I'm a teacher at heart. So I know you are only going to get out of this session what you put into it. So that is participation. So I'd like to see upwards of about at least 120 clicks on that yes box to let me know that you are with me as we get ready to jump into this first question. So while I'm waiting to see the thumbs up in that yes poll, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the poll for this first question and get that set up over here. So let me decrease this box, move some things around. We're at 115, so we're looking a little bit better. Let me get a few more yeses so I know you guys can hear me and that you're with me. I'm going to explain the way we're going to be doing this. I'm going to unbroadcast these results. So you're going to see, oh, perfect, we hit that target. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this yes/no poll. What we are going to do is, in this top poll up here, we are going to click on Still Solving, that bottom button. That is going to let me know that you are going to be participating in solving this question. So again, about close to 180 people in here. So I want to see at least 125 still solvings in that poll. You will not be able to see that question until I get close to that 125. So I want to see lots of participation here. Once we get close to that number, I will reveal that question. As you approach this first question, I want you to use whatever approach you are currently using to solve sentence correction questions. So however you are approaching these questions right now, that is what I want you to use. So you do you on this first question, and then we're going to talk about the approach that you possibly are currently using, and then we're going to talk about this e-GMAT approach. So I only have about 68 people that are with me to solve this first question. I need to see more people participating. Let's get this number up there. We're going to click on that still solving. Let's at least get to 100. We're at about 85 right now, 87. Let's get this climbing. The more people that we get participating, the better this session's going to be, the more you're going to learn. We've got 4 really good questions today that are going to really help you understand this e-GMAT approach, really help you see why meaning is so important. Okay, we're almost to 100. We're at 93. Let me get a few more of you. I know that we can get there. We're really close. Get out of those answer choices. Click on still solving to let me know that you're going to be working with me on this. A few of you are up in choice A already. I want you to be able to see the question first before you start selecting answer choices. Get down into that still solving. All right, we're pretty close. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to show you the question. Typically about 90 seconds to solve a sentence correction question. However, I see some of you are like, where's the question? It's not there yet. I was waiting to get everybody in that still solving poll. About 90 seconds to solve a question, but I'm going to go with the pulse of the class. So when I see about 80% of you have solved the question, then I will give you a 30-second warning. Once that 30 seconds has elapsed, then I will let you know that I'm going to be closing the poll, so you should be locking in those answers. So remember, you are using whatever approach you are currently using to solve SC questions. I'm going to mute myself while you're solving the question. Best of luck. About 30 seconds remaining. I have about 6 of you that need to go ahead and lock in those final answer choices. Time to make some tough decisions. Okay, we're down to 5. I don't want to rush you. I do want to give you time to solve it, but we're past that 2-minute mark. So let's lock in those final answers. I'm going to give you about 5 more seconds. We're down to 4. I'm going to close the poll. We're down to 3, 2. Can I get those final 2 people to lock in those answers? All right, I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, for those of you that did not get those final 2, I apologize you didn't get those answers locked in. But, all right, let's take a look. I want you guys to think here about the thought process that you went through. And I want you to think about the answer choice you selected. I'm going to reopen this yes/no poll, and I want you to tell me, with yes being a thumbs up and no being that thumbs down, how confident are you in your answer choice? Are you feeling pretty confident? Are you not so confident? And I want you to be honest with your thought process here, because one thing you need when you go into sentence correction is a little bit of confidence in how you're approaching these sentences, okay? So so we're about 50%. I'm going to broadcast the results here with our confidence levels. So about 46% of you are confident, a little bit of fluctuation going on here, and about 53% of you not so confident. So let's talk about this. I want you to think about the approach you used. So one of the most popular approaches that we see with students is we have students who read through the sentence. So they do that quick read through of the sentence, and then they take a look at their answer choices, and they scan those answer choices to find similarities or patterns. So they would look and they would notice here that choice A and B do not have by. So if we look at choice A and B here, we notice that by is missing. And then we notice C, D, and E all have by. So they decide, okay, well, as I was reading, I noticed in the non-underlined portion less by, and then didn't have by after it, so I must need by. So they go ahead and they decide that the split between C, D, and E is the correct split to go with. And so they make that decision and they move down to C, D, and E, and they eliminate A and B, okay? And so then they start process of elimination with C, D, and E quickly, and they say, well, C looks really weird because by the coming to an end of, not precise, pretty wordy, not really making sense. So they eliminate choice C. They look at D by ending. They look at E by the end of. They get down to those two answer choices. They decide E is better because that gives us that noun entity. So that they kick into that grammatical result. So they reject D. They go with E. Now, I'm going to clear these answers here, and I want you to be honest. And I'm going to not broadcast because I want pure honesty here. How many of you used this kind of fast food approach, quick analysis? Give me a yes in that yes pod if you did, and complete honesty here. How many of you are using this kind of, let me reopen the poll, that would be helpful here. How many of you are using kind of this fast food approach? And what I mean by fast food is we do it because it's quick. We do it because it's easy. We do it because we're under the gun time-wise, and we want to get through the question and get to that answer choice. And total honesty, that's why I'm not broadcasting the results, because the only way we're going to improve on sentence correction is being completely honest with how we're approaching our sentences. All right, good. Thank you for your honesty. All right, I'm going to end this poll now because I'm going to share the results. Nobody knows who answered what, but you'll see that the majority of you are using kind of this fast food method. And just like fast food, it's not the best choice for us. It's not healthy for us. If you're using this approach, you're not going to get the result you want here. You're not going to get to that correct answer choice, okay? You're not going to get to that level in SC if you're using this fast food splits approach. Okay, you just can't get there. This is actually an advanced official question. It is a grammar-based question. You obviously have to know a little bit of grammar to get through SC, but you have to be able to use that grammar as a tool to express the communication. And I'll be honest, when I joined the EGMAT team, I was very grammar-based. I was an English teacher prior to joining the EGMAT team, and grammar was a big thing for me. But the meaning-based approach has to be first and foremost, and then grammar comes as that tool to express that meaning and that communication. So you cannot solve difficult questions by using this splits pattern recognition and only using grammar. It's not going to get you to that 90th percentile level that you want to get to. You have to use meaning first, and then you can use those tools of grammar to help you express that meaning in a correct manner. So let's take a look at this sentence using this e-GMAT approach, and we're going to show you how to do this in a manner that's going to get you that correct answer choice. So the first step that we're going to utilize is really reading that sentence carefully. You have to spend the time with the original sentence to understand what the author is intending to communicate. And I always say when you're starting out with SC, the best thing to do here is to be actively reading the sentence, pausing and assessing the meaning as you go. So as we begin reading, we see the overall slackening of growth and productivity is influenced. So right away, I know that I have this slackening, and this slackening is influenced, and this slackening is of growth. Okay, so this slackening is influenced by something. So I start thinking to myself and asking myself questions. Okay, well, what is this slackening? What is it influenced by? And as I keep reading, I see less by government regulation. Okay, so this is the first piece of how it's influenced. That's my first piece, less by government regulation. Although, so now I know although immediately offers me that contrast. Although that is significant for specific industries like mining, and I know that is referring to this government regulation. Okay, so this government regulation is significant for specific industries like mining. So this is referring to this regulation for industries like mining. Then the coming to an end of a period of rapid growth in agriculture productivity. So this is my second piece, that this coming to an end of a period in agriculture productivity. Okay, so now that I have worked my way through this sentence, I now have these two reasons why the slackening of growth, or how the slackening of growth is influenced. So actively reading the sentence, working through it, asking probing questions to really understand the meaning of the sentence. Okay, now the next step is pulling key aspects from the sentence, and actively reading that sentence will lead us to be able to pull these key aspects of the sentence. So aspect one, the sentence explains the factors behind the reduction in growth and productivity. That's that first main idea that we pulled from this first chunk of the sentence right here. Okay, the second aspect, the said reduction happens for two reasons: government regulation and the fact that the period of rapid growth in agriculture productivity is coming to an end. So those were those pieces that we numbered over here, 1 and 2. Okay, so those are those main ideas that we were actively pausing and pulling from the sentence as we were understanding it. And then aspect 3, the comparison stated, number 2 has more impact than number 1. And that was that although, right? That the government regulation is significant for specific industries like mining, and that has more impact, right? Or less impact, excuse me, than the coming to the end of the period. So we get that contrast that although is stating. Okay, so I'm going to ask this question again in this yes or no poll. How many of you are spending this much time with your original sentence as you're preparing for SC to extract this meaning? I'll unbroadcast so we can be honest. How many of us are spending this much time? Honest answers. And really extracting the meaning, making sure you're pulling these key aspects. Okay, good. I'm glad to see that we are. Okay, good. So let me share this. So it looks like a lot of you are spending the time up front with this meaning. So that's good to hear. All right, now I want you to think about a key piece here, because we only had, our accuracy on this sentence isn't as great. We only had about 25% accuracy on this sentence. So I'm going to see if we can get our accuracy rate up a little bit here. So I want you to think about something. I want to do a meaning deep dive. So let me pull up a new poll here. I want you to think about the underlined portion of this sentence. So let me ask you this. Let me unbroadcast this. I want you to think about what the underlined portion of the sentence means. What does the coming to the end of mean here? So when we focus in on that underlined portion, what does the coming to an end of mean here? The period is slowly drawing to an end, the action of ending the period, or the end of the period? I'll give you guys about 15 more seconds. I want to see lots of answers in here. Okay, about 5 more seconds. Really think about this underlined portion. What does the coming to an end of mean? Okay, I'm closing this poll in 3, 2, 1. Lock in any final answers. All right, so let's talk about this, because this is really important to the meaning of this sentence. So choice A, the period is slowly drawing to an end. So look at our woolly mammoths here. If we have this timeline, okay, the woolly mammoth became extinct by the coming to the end of the Ice Age. So this tells us that in time period A, we had all these woolly mammoths, right? And as the years went on, we see fewer woolly mammoths in period B, fewer woolly mammoths in period C, and by the coming to the end of the Ice Age, by the time we get into period D, by the coming to the end, that movement towards the end, we have no more woolly mammoths, right? So by the coming to the end of the Ice Age, we get this period is slowly drawing to the end, and our woolly mammoths are slowly becoming extinct. So we get that feeling that it's moving slowly to the end, okay? So that definitely is the meaning of coming to an end. Now, choice B would be that the woolly mammoth became extinct by ending the Ice Age. So this gives us that sense and meaning that some event ended the Ice Age, right? That there was some kind of cataclysmic event or some natural disaster or something happened that all at once the Ice Age was over, that boom, it happened, right? That something ended that period, okay? Very different meaning than the period slowly drawing to an end, right? And then choice C, the end of the period. Now here, the end of the period would mean that the woolly mammoth became extinct by the end of the Ice Age. That doesn't give us the slow extinction. It just means that by the end, there was no more woolly mammoths. So we could have had the same amount in period A, B, C, and then all of a sudden, boom, by the end, there's no more. It doesn't give us that slow decrease over time. It doesn't give us that sense that by the coming to an end that things are wrapping up. It just says by the end, there were no more, but we don't get that slow decrease over time, that sense of that. Is that difference in meaning clear to everybody? Let me clear the answers out of the yes, no poll and reopen that. Does everybody see the difference between choices A and C? So by the coming to the end really gives us that difference in meaning. So I'm glad to see there's about the majority of you are seeing the difference in this. And for that those few of you that aren't, by the end just means at some point, by the end of this, there were no more woolly mammoths. Coming to an end, think of, coming to the end of vacation, right? That slow wrapping down of vacation, but by the end just gives you that distinct time. Okay, so a very different sense of that wrapping down of vacation versus just by the end. All right, so I want you to think about that difference in meaning that we're getting. Now, I am going to, let me find my poll here. So I am going to ask you guys, now that we've done this meaning, okay, now think of this meaning and these aspects. Oops, no, don't get in the poll yet. I want you to think about this meaning of the underlined portion that we just discussed, the coming to an end, and what the author's intending to communicate. And I want you to think about these aspects that we've discussed, okay? Think about these two things. Were you able to, in the yes/no poll, thinking about this meaning and thinking about these aspects with the comparisons, were you able to get this full meaning of the underlined portion and all these aspects? Were you able to assess all this meaning together? Be honest. Because only 25% of us answered this question correctly, which tells me that somewhere we were not able to get to the correct meaning. Okay, so good. I'm glad to see that we're being honest with ourselves. Okay, so now that we've discussed this meaning and we've discussed these aspects, I want to give you all a chance to try your hand at this question again. So go ahead and click on Still Solving. Well, you guys are just going to jump right in. But go ahead, I'm going to give you guys about a minute to jump in and see if you want to change your votes based on our discussion here. I'd love to see just as many people participate in this go as we saw in the first one. Okay, about 10 seconds remaining. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. I've got about 21 of you still solving here. Can I get you guys to start locking in those answers? I definitely want to make sure I give you time to think about this, but I also want to make sure that we keep moving through the session. So go ahead and, okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. 3, 2, 1. Now I'm going to also bring back our poll, oops, from the first question so we can compare our results here. So let me broadcast. So our first time around is the second bottom poll. So on our first goal. Now let's discuss these answer choices. So we know, grammatically speaking, okay, that, and we discussed this when we went through that splits method, that we have an issue of parallelism here, right? Because we're missing that by from the second part of the sentence here, because we have less by government regulation up here. And we know in order to keep this comparison parallel, we also need then by down here following then. So we do have that parallelism error. So as we're evaluating our answer choices, we can eliminate A and B pretty quickly, okay? So if you landed on A and B, so in our first go around, about 5% of you landed on A and about 21% of you landed on B, okay? So we had about 5% and 21%. So sorry, my annotations are getting messy. So if you were not able to see that grammatical error there, that is a tool, that's a concept that you need to freshen up on. Now, in our second go around, again, there was a few of you that still landed on choice A, okay, and not as many on choice B, but again, need to freshen up on that grammatical, those grammar concepts. Now, choice C, D, and E, let's talk about that because that's where only the meaning understanding is going to get you to this right answer choice. Now, that aspect is coming to an end, okay? Now, we talked about choice D, only 2% after we discussed this meaning versus that 22% the first time we did it, chose choice D. So you were able to understand why by ending, after we did that deep dive into the meaning, was indeed incorrect. So nice job there, understanding that meaning, because we don't have that action of anybody ending anything. Now, choice C and E, these are where those two choices we come down to. And GMAT is a test of meaning and logic. It's a test of communication. Can you understand that intent that is presented? Can you understand how to express it in the correct form? Can you get into the mind of your buddy, the author, and say, okay, this is how I have to help my buddy grammatically express this? And that's the difference. So when we started this originally, 35% of you wanted to go with choice E. But after we did that meaning deep dive, we got 64% of you to understand why when we use that meaning-based approach, my 4 is not working out for me here. When we use that meaning-based approach, 64% of you understood why choice C was the better answer here. And that is why this approach absolutely works better. Is everybody seeing the difference in this approach? Let me know in that yes/no poll. I want to see more participation here before we move on to this next question. I see a few of you still are not convinced. So really it comes down to that meaning, that difference in the expression that by the end of has that definitive period, whereby the coming to an end of expresses that slow trajectory of that period slowly coming to an end and what's happening, okay? So I'm gonna keep moving. If you guys have any further questions, Shraddha's heading up that Q&A pod, so I know she will definitely answer any lingering questions there. But I'm glad to see that the majority of you are really understanding this meaning, because that is the key to these difficult questions, is meaning, 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 okay? So if you looked at this sentence, this is an advanced sentence, about 25% of it is underlined. And as we work through these questions, you are going to understand that it really doesn't matter how much of the sentence is underlined. It is going to become about how much time you spend extracting that meaning, okay? So If you still doubt me, make sure you check in on LinkedIn, watch the YouTube debriefs. There are students that continually testify to these results and will tell you time and time again that this approach is working for them. It makes all the difference in the world. So we are going to move on to the second question. Go ahead. I'm going to open this poll. I want you to click on still solving to let me know that you are with me for this second question. During the second question, I want you to apply this meaning-based approach. Click on that still solving in that top poll, not the yes/no poll here, the top poll. We've got about 168 of you in this session, so I want to see like 120 thumbs up in that solving with us in this next question. And I want you to apply this meaning-based approach, that three-step process. Spend the time with the original sentence, extract that meaning, do that error analysis, check, has our author used those grammatical tools to properly express, and then move through those answer choices if you find an error. Okay, I've got about 100 of you. Let's see if I can get about 20 more to go through this next question with me. This is a good one of our favorites. Any other takers? We're at about 105. Let's get a few more. I'm going to give you guys about 10 more seconds to click in. And we're going to move through this one a little quicker now that you guys are getting the gist of this approach. Again, I'm going to give you about 90 seconds. I'm going to watch the numbers. When about 80% of you have solved the question, I'll give you that 30-second mark. All right, I would love to see about 6 more of you jump in and join me on this question, but I am not going to hold those of you that are ready to go back any longer. Go ahead and get to work. 30 seconds remaining. Okay, I have about 8 of you that I need to lock in your final answers. I want to keep moving through the session. We still have 2 more questions after this, so I want to make sure that Shada gets her time with you as well. So we're down to 6 people. Go ahead and lock in those final answer choices. I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3. We have 3 of you left. Lock in those answer choices. 2. The last 2 of you. 1. One more. Final choice. Last person. Yes? No? 1? Okay, closing the poll. All right, so let me know in this yes, no poll, thumbs up if we felt more confident with this question. I like it. A lot more confidence going across here. Look at this. Nicely done. From the data I'm seeing in the results, you guys were more confident. So let's move through this. I'm going to move this yes, no poll out of here, and I'm going to stretch up this answer questions, short answers, so you guys can answer some questions in here as I ask them. So let's get started reading through this sentence. Although appearing less appetizing than most of their round and red supermarket cousins. So right away, I see the use of although, and I know right here at the beginning that I have a contrast. So I'm going to keep my eye open for that. So although appearing less appetizing than most of their round and red supermarket cousins, heirloom tomatoes grown from seeds saved during the previous year. So I know grown is describing heirloom tomatoes, telling me how these heirloom tomatoes are grown. I always make note of my pronouns and antecedents as I'm reading through a sentence, making sure things are connected properly. So they referring to heirloom tomatoes here. So they are often striped or green and striped, excuse me, I skipped part of that, are often green and striped or have plenty of bumps and bruises. Okay, so this is providing me information about these heirloom tomatoes. Heirlooms are more flavorful and thus increasing in demand. Okay, so lots of information about heirloom tomatoes. So we're going to keep moving on. Always like to ask myself these probing questions. So now I'm going to ask those probing questions of you guys to get you thinking about this sentence. So my first question, I want you to use this short answer poll here. What are less appetizing that most of their round and red supermarket cousins? I want to see lots of answers here. I'm not broadcasting because I don't want you to take each other's answers. Feel free to abbreviate. Good. All right, nicely done. Thank you for the participation. Awesome. Heirloom tomatoes. Great. Okay, now next question. What are grown from seeds saved during the previous year? Good. Okay. Yes. Nicely done. Again, heirloom tomatoes. All right, let me clear these answers out really quickly so I can get the next question going. What are often green and striped or have bumps and bruises? Awesome. Nicely done again. Heirloom tomatoes. Excellent. And let me clear these out. And my last question for you, what are more flavorful and hence increasing in demand? Perfect. Yes, heirloom tomatoes across the board. So we have lots of descriptive information about these heirloom tomatoes. Nicely done. So now that I have pulled all these key components, I can turn these probing questions into my key aspects or my main ideas of my sentence. Heirloom tomatoes appear less appetizing than most of their round and red supermarket cousins. Heirloom tomatoes are grown from seeds saved during the previous year. Heirloom tomatoes, which we said they, remember I stopped and marked up that. So they are often green and striped or have bumps and bruises. So I'm making that antecedent pronoun connection. And heirloom tomatoes are more flavorful and hence increasing in demand. So my next question for you that I want you to put in the short answer box, because I'm going to have you do more of the work this time than me, is what is the contrast indicated by the word although? So between which aspects is it between that are being contrasted? So is aspect 1 and 2 being contrasted? Is it aspect 3 and 4 that's being contrasted? What's being contrasted here? Okay, good. Okay, so I'm seeing some good answers across the board. So for those of you that gave me aspects 1 and 4, you are indeed correct here. We are getting that contrast between heirloom tomatoes appear less appetizing than most of their round and red supermarket cousins, but they're more flavorful, and hence they're increasing in demand. So that is our contrast here. Now, let me ask that next level question now that we seem to understand this meaning and have our hands around this meaning. Are there any grammatical errors in this sentence? We get a few more answers. Good. Okay. Thank you all for your participation. Absolutely, we do have a grammatical error in the sentence. We do not have a verb for heirloom tomatoes, okay? And I always say subject-verb pairs are what we have to go with first. Those are our pillars of the sentence. So that should always be that grammatical pillar that you check first. So when we look, we see that heirloom tomatoes sitting here, and if you're thinking grown as that verb, which is where a lot of students go first, they try to make this that verb connection, but grown is actually a modifier here that's describing how heirloom tomatoes are grown, right? They're grown from seeds, so that's a modifier. They is taking the verb are. They are often green and striped or have. So this is taking those verbs there, and heirlooms are is the subject verb pair here. So this verb heirloom tomatoes up here at the top is without, or the subject, excuse me, heirloom tomatoes up there at the top is without a verb buddy. So heirloom tomatoes, that subject up there has no verb to dance with in this sentence. Now I see some of you are thinking they, or that there's a pronoun error here. There is no pronoun error in the sentence, okay? They is referring to heirloom tomatoes. Okay, and up at the top of the sentence, we see, although appearing less appetizing than most of their round and red supermarket cousins, there is also referring to heirloom tomatoes, okay? So the subject, heirloom tomatoes, right up here, does not have a verb because we have this subject verb grouping right here, this subject verb grouping right here, hence this subject up here does not have a verb associated with it. No pronoun errors, all our pronouns are accounted for, okay? So let's move on and look at our answer choices. Now I'm going to broadcast your results here. Much better results this go around. We had a 51% accuracy rate with choice B. So this tells me you guys really extracted that meaning. Choice A is incorrect for what we just discussed, no verb. Choice C, again, no verb for heirloom tomatoes. So that same error in choice A is repeated. So if you rejected choice A, but you chose choice C, you need to ask yourself, what verb were you associating with heirloom tomatoes here? Okay. Now, choice D, typically that's where we see our second most popular choice, and that again was the case here, because looks like about 22% of you landed here. So that subject-verb pair is rectified here. However, look at choice D closely. That contrast has been removed. So although it's been removed from that sentence, so that contrast has been removed, and we need to maintain that contrast in the sentence. If that contrast is presented in the original sentence, that meaning and that contrast needs to be carried throughout. Okay? Now, if you miss that subject-verb concept in the original sentence, you need to make sure that you really understand that whole idea that every subject needs a verb, right, in order for it to work in the sentence. Okay? The subject has to have something to do. It needs a verb to be compared with. So that's that subject-verb must exist rule. Okay? And then choice E, again, very few people landed on choice E, but again, no verb for heirloom tomatoes. So you guys did excellent on this sentence. Very well done. Big takeaways here. If you spend that time to extract all the aspects and meaning from the sentence, even if the sentence seems incomplete, and that's very much what happens with this heirloom tomatoes sentence. When you're missing a verb, you kind of feel like your subjects are hanging there with nothing to do. Okay? And those types of errors tend to make the subject feel incomplete. So keep your eye out for that. Those are like little alerts to look for in communicating the meaning of the sentence. So here we saw a little bit more of the sentence was underlined. Splits, again, not possible to use. We were down to those two possible choices, B and D, but you noticed with D, they removed that contrast, and it wasn't about grammar because the verb was there. It was about meaning again. So if you landed on choice D, you really need to focus in on that meaning. For those of you that got to choice B, nice job. You utilized that meaning-based approach that we learned with that first question, and you got to the correct answer choice. So well done. Study plans are being offered for e-GMAT students and free trial users, so make sure you're utilizing those. They are great in order to help you plan your time and focus in on your preparations for GMAT. If you are an e-GMAT student, please, please, please work with the customer success team. They are an amazing group. They will have your personalized study plan. They will help you understand that plan and help you understand the 3 stages of learning to get you prepared and ready for success when you take that GMAT, because we want you to be as successful as possible so you can reach that target score. And that all starts with the planning stages and utilizing those personalized study plans to get what you need out of the approach to the course. Make sure you attend the onboarding sessions. They're held twice per week. There's also readiness sessions, so make sure that you attend those test readiness sessions to help you prepare. Have all the guidance videos, the 3 stages of learning. They really have everything covered. I can't say enough about the customer success team. They really are an amazing group. Free trial students, you can also work with the GMAT strategy experts. You should take the Sigma X mock test to see where you're at, get your starting abilities, have that target score in mind so they know where to start helping you, where you want to get. So you have that idea of where you are and where you want to go. So that really helps with the planning phases. Book your slots. There's limited time slots, so make sure that you get in and get your slots so you can get going. I'm going to turn it over to Shraddha now. Thank you all for hanging with me. I hope these questions were helpful. Shraddha is the true expert with all the longevity on our team. I always call her my real superhero, so I'm going to let her take it away now.
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me? If yes, let me quickly get the yes no poll. All right, we have plethora of polls here. Okay, I guess it's somewhere here. All right, never mind. Let's do it in the please answer the question. Y for yes, N for no, if you can hear me. Awesome. Okay, so most of you are saying yes, which is very good. Now, while I was answering the questions in the Q&A poll, most of you asked this question that, hey, if choice A is wrong, how can we be sure of the meaning presented by the sentence? And why this meaning-based approach, if this is what you have, if this is what your question is, why are we spending so much of time on the original sentence, dissecting it so much? The answer is that, come to think about it, what is a sentence in a sentence question problem? It is the idea, it is the information that the author wants to pass on to us, to the reader. And it is just not in GMAT realm, but anything that we read, any piece of literature, the idea is to communicate an information. And that meaning, if again I come back to the GMAT realm, or any sentence that we read, it has to make some sense, right? If it doesn't make sense, then we know that, hey, this doesn't make sense. What's the point in reading it? So the idea is that the whole idea of communication is to present logical information. So it is the logic that is of topmost importance in any kind of communication. And what is the grammar? Grammar is just our tool to present that logic. This is the reason why it is so very important that we understand the meaning of the sentence before even we look into the question, the grammar part of it, the answer choices. Okay, so with this understanding, now I would like to add another piece of information over here, is that the two questions that you solved so far, the original sentence did not have any logical issue. They definitely had grammatical issue that is there, but that grammatical error did not hinder our understanding of the original sentence. The meaning was very clear. We were not scratching our head to find out the intended meaning of the author. Yes, but because we understood that, okay, this is the meaning that the author needs to convey, we could see the grammatical error that our dear friend author made in writing the original sentence. And we helped him or ourselves, whatever we may call it, by choosing the correct answer. However, now you may ask that, okay, can we rely on the original sentence every single time? What if I don't understand the meaning, or if it does not present the logic? What am I supposed to do then? The answer to your question is that every single SC problem will always have enough context for you to understand the meaning. Either it will clearly present the logic, or it will have enough information for you to conclude the meaning, or to infer or extract the intended logical meaning. And through the next two questions, this is what we are going to do. We are going to deal with two sentences that do not present logical meaning, but even then we will be able to solve them, because we are going to find the missing pieces from the sentence itself, extract it, put it together, and then we are going to find our correct answer. Okay, so in order to do that, first of all, I would want all of you to click on Still Solving, our regular deal. I need to understand how many of you are engaged with me here with this question. I will only show the question to you once I see that I have about 100 people with me in this question, if that's the reasonable number. Okay, so let's get to that point. And once again, I would want you to first focus on the original sentence, spend enough time, and then look at the answer choices. Okay, so anybody else who would want to jump in? Okay, so let's see the question. That's your question on the screen, which says many of them chisel. That's the first few words. Again, keep the meaning hat on all the time. First look at the logic and then look at the answer choices. Okay, all the best. All right, I've gotten majority of the answers, waiting for a few of you who would now want to wrap up this one. So please make your choices. I will be closing this poll in 10 seconds, so my countdown begins. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, last call. Anybody who wants to lock an answer? I don't see any movements. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll here. Let's deal with this question now. Let's see what this question is really telling us, and we will do so by applying, obviously, the e-GMAT meaning-based approach. So I'm going to break my sentence first, and I'm going to read each part separately. Many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Okay, so here the author is presenting us the information that many of them, something which are numerous, are chiseled or carved out from solid rock many hundreds years ago. Okay, so that's the first part of my sentence. Fine. Then what the author says, the mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia are dotted with hundreds of monasteries. So here we get the information that the mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia, they are dotted with hundreds of monasteries. So very simple looking sentence, I would say. Not too much to process here, or maybe there is. Let me ask this question to you. The way this sentence is written, what does it say? What is chiseled, or what are chiseled, because it says many of them, what are chiseled from solid rock centuries ago? I'm asking this question from the perspective of the original sentence. When you read this sentence, what is the meaning that you got from the way the sentence is written? Okay, I have a lot of mixed reviews over here. Maybe my question is not very clear to you. I'm asking you the question that when you read the sentence, what meaning does it give? Just the sentence, the way it is written, what meaning does it give? Confusion, what are chiseled? Mountains or monasteries? Monasteries. Logic says monasteries. Yes, that's the kind of, that's very specific, exactly your thought process, and that is what I want to understand, your thought process here. So basically, the way this sentence is written, it presents few information, talks about the mountainous regions of this particular geographical location. Then it says that something is chiseled centuries ago, and then it says these regions are marked with hundreds and monasteries. However, what is the sentence saying? The sentence is saying that it is these regions that are chiseled, or that are chiseled from solid rock. Now, let me ask you this. Does it make sense to say that mountainous regions are chiseled from solid rock? Does it make sense? N for no, Y for yes. Let's be precise. Don't want you to be typing too much. No. I'm so glad to see that unanimously all of you understand this point that, hey, mountains cannot be chiseled out of rock because mountains are made up out of rock, right? Mountains are made up out of the rock. So something that is made up out of rock, it's not that somebody sat there and chiseled. Chisel is a tool, right? We all understand. In sculpting, we use chisel and hammer to give the shape to the rock, or you know, other hard material. So it's not logical to say that somebody sat out there on solid rocks and chiseled mountainous regions. That's absolutely illogical, right? Okay, so aspect 2 does not make sense in the in this sentence. However, what we need to do here is that still not jump to the answer choices. We will think and see that what is it that many of them chiseled can actually modify, because this is your entire sentence. Everything has to be in here. There are no loose ends. We are not getting any foreign entity from outside, right? So if a modifier has been used or something has been described as chiseled from solid rock, it is present in the sentence itself. And that is what we need to dig out. That is what we need to chisel out of this sentence, right? So what, and many of you did say, logically, if I ask you this question, logically, what is chiseled from rock? Could you give your answers in the please answer the question? Monasteries. Absolutely correct. So see, even if you have not mastered, I would say, the meaning-based approach, we all have that logical acumen to understand what makes sense and what does not make sense. This is the acumen that we need to put in practice while solving SC questions. And I told you, that entity that is chiseled is present in the sentence itself. All we need to do is take that extra step to infer the logical meaning. So we know from the sentence that, hey, my dear friend authored again made a mistake in writing the sentence, right? So at this point, our takeaway is that firstly, read the sentence very, very diligently. Very diligently. And once we read that, we first need to ask ourselves, hey, does that make sense? If it makes sense, good. We can now look at the grammar part of it to make sure that, okay, the logic is conveyed through the right grammar. But if the sentence does not make sense, then we tell ourselves, okay, let me dig deeper into the sentence and try to figure out which how I can, how I can shift the information or change the information to extract the correct meaning. I really visualize a puzzle piece when I'm talking about this whole thing that, in sentence structure, what do? We take a big sentence, we break it down into pieces, and then just like we use the visual aid in puzzle pieces, we kind of match, okay, yeah, this piece should come after this piece should come after that piece. In the very same way, when we are putting together all these broken parts of the sentence into logical arrangement, that's when we will be able to see the entire story. Every SC sentence tells us a story. It's complete in itself. All we need to do is rearrange the information to make our puzzle complete, to see that to see that visual. Okay, so now that we have also inferred our meaning, right? By the way, just for your information, it is an official question from Advanced Official Guide. It's a communication-based question. Why do they call it communication-based question? Because the way the original sentence is written, it does not have any grammatical error. There is no grammatical error in this sentence. But the way the sentence is written, it certainly does not present the logic. It's illogical the way it is written. So what we need to do is that all of you agree with me that, hey, this part of the sentence must be talking about monasteries. So all we need to do is change the place of this modifier and try to place it next to this. And then, so what do you think? If we do that, if I pick up many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries ago and place it after monasteries, will the sentence become correct? Take to the poll. Good. All of you do agree with me. In fact, most of you, I would say, that you do agree with me. That's all we need to do. Hey, many of them chiseled, monasteries are chiseled. So why do we have it closer to mountainous regions? Let's put it closer to the monasteries. That's all we need to do. And then the sentence will be fine. So see, I have still not looked at the answer choices. We are still working through our original sentence. But by doing this diligent evaluation of the original sentence, I kind of know that, okay, this is how my correct answer choice should look like. I also know that how it's going to look, what's going to be there. Okay, so this is the beauty of working with the original sentence. When you apply the meaning-based approach, you saw the sentence, you understood the meaning is not right, you know exactly what grammar you need to change in this sentence to get the right answer. And now the POE is definitely going to be a cakewalk, and you will see that. Okay, so choice A is definitely out because we know that it is not the correct answer. Let me broadcast the result here. Just one of you chose choice A. Very good. You all rejected choice B also because once again, we have an issue with chiseled from solid rock is again talking about the mountainous regions. Added to that is the error of redundancy. Why? Because this sentence is also saying that Ethiopia are dotted with many hundreds of monasteries. When we say hundreds of monasteries, we already know that we are talking about numerous units. We don't need to add many over there. Okay. So that's the problem with choice B. Choice C also stands incorrect. Good to see that not many of you chose it. It has a verb tense error. Why? Because we are saying hundreds of, oh, by the way, the modifier error, the description error that we found in choice A has been taken care of, right? So now choice C is giving us the meaning. So now we are getting to the meaning, choice after choice. Hundreds of monasteries, many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries. So see, just by placing this modifier next to monasteries, at least the logic of the sentence has been corrected. But now choice C has added the grammatical error by using the continuous tense, present continuous tense, are dotting. It's not that while we are talking, the monasteries are mushrooming up in the said mountainous regions. The sentence was to present a general information that they exist over there, right? So that meaning has to be conveyed by the usage of simple present tense. And for you, I have a few examples, continuous tense versus simple past tense. You know, so you can take a look at these sentences and understand the very basic usage of these simple verbs. Okay, let's come back to choices D and E. And by the way, choices D and E are the most popular answer choices for this one. Now, many of you did tell me that, hey, no, wait, just by moving many of them next to monasteries will not make it correct, because you had this problem of many of which and this and that and all of that. But take a look at choice D. Choice D is not the correct answer. Why? Because all the aspects are fine. The meaning is fine. The mountainous regions of northern Utopia are dotted with hundreds of monasteries, many of which are chiseled, which is fine in the sense that this modifier is now correctly talking about hundreds of monasteries. But look at this part over here. Centuries ago, an action that took place centuries ago. How can we write that action in simple present tense? We cannot do so, right? An action that has happened in the past bygone time, it has to be written in the simple past tense. And that's the error that we see in choice D. Okay, so this leaves us with choice E. And okay, so here we have a few examples. Simple past, simple present, once again, with the time markers, you know, over here. Most patients coming to the ER are admitted into the intensive care unit. There is no timeline. We are talking about general information and information that is relevant in the present. So are admitted is fine. But the moment we add a specific timeline to the sentence, specifically a timeline belonging to past, we have to use simple past tense verb with that. And that's why you see were admitted over there, even if the context of both these sentences are similar, except for the timing part in this. Okay, so in choice D, the usage of the simple present tense are chiseled for an action that took place centuries ago is incorrect. Choice E indeed is the correct answer. And see, this is exactly what we did. This is my original sentence over here. To correct this choice, what is being done is that this modifier has been picked up from its place and has been put at the end of the sentence, and this is what we had predicted as well when we were looking at the correct answer, when we were dealing with our original choice, trying to figure out what can we do in this sentence so that it presents logical meaning, and this is all we had to do, right? No issues whatsoever ever. Okay, now many of you do have this question about choice D and E. Hey, how is many of which is correct or many of them is correct? My answer to you, and try to understand this part, okay? My answer to this question is both of these structures are correct. I have also identified these structures for you. This is the structure for choice D. We have the clause and the independent clause. many of which are chiseled from solid rock centuries ago, right? So the structure is fine. Over here, we have an independent clause plus a noun modifier, many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries. Both are grammatically correct, both which and them in their respective answer choices have been used correctly in the correct form in which they must be used. That is not the issue. The issue is with this R. Now, if you were to ask me, okay, if we change that R into were, will D become correct? Yes, then D will become correct, but then you cannot have D and E together in the sentence. There cannot be two logically and grammatically answer choice in any of the questions. It's not only about SC. You pick up any exam that has multiple choice answer type or question type, there has to be only one correct answer, only one. And choice D brings in that error by using the simple present tense. But choice E is that error-free answer that presents the logic without any grammatical error. Does this make sense to all of you? Now you are clear about what's going on in D and E? Awesome. Good to see. The response is trickling in fast. Okay. All right. So once again, I have just repeated this slide at the end to show you that, if you have questions about, hey, what about them? Is it talking about monasteries? Is it talking about mountainous regions? I'll simply tell you this. In the beginning, we had no issues understanding that them is talking about the mountainous regions because it is placed closer to that, right? So if I just change it and put it at the end of the sentence, now my them will only talk about monasteries. That is the closest thing that we have. So meaning, again, focus on the meaning. When it was there in the beginning, it was talking about mountainous regions. Now it has been placed next to monasteries. It is talking about monasteries. There is no confusion what them is talking about. Okay, we actually found the error because them was associating with this. There was no question for this them to talk about anything else. We know that from the way the language is used. So that's all we did. We just changed it, and here we go. We have a right answer. Make sense? All right. I guess most of you would agree with that. And all right. So with this, let's move on to a quick takeaway. So our recommendation, our suggestion, our request, whatever you want to take it to be, please spend enough time with the original sentence. I repeat again, original sentence is the only way to understand what the author wants to speak, because we cannot bring in any outside information. There is no Googling to find out the meaning. There is no bringing in our own knowledge that we may have about that particular topic. Okay, so we only will have to depend on the original sentence to understand the meaning. If it presents the logic, well and good. All we need to do is correct the grammar. If it does not present the logic, then we know that the answer is right in there. All we need to do is, break that puzzle and try to put it back together so we get our logical visual or the logical story. Okay. Can there be a better answer than E? I'm really not concerned, because all I need to do is, I have been given 5 answer choices. Let's focus on that. Right? I mean, this exercise or this question has no relevance with what we have, right? So let's deal with 5. I certainly do not want to see 6 or 7 answer choices. Okay, so with that, we've come to the end of our third question. We saw this question was completely underlined, as it says 100% underlined, but we did not change our approach. There couldn't be a splits. I mean, we could do the splits, but then again, people stumble upon D and E. But good to see that this batch, this class, especially today, did extremely well, because most of the time it is D that is chosen over E. But I see that today E is a clear winner with a good margin out there, right? So that's a very good performance, and you guys are focusing at the right place. It is all because now you probably appreciate the efficacy of this process, of meaning-based process, and you are focusing at the right direction, not boggling your head with too many grammatical concepts. Yes, this meaning doesn't make sense. Let's just turn it around and see what's going on. Okay. So again, from the grammar point of view, we saw that choice A was error-free. There was no grammatical error over there, but the way the sentence was written, it is not the correct answer. Okay. I have a question. This approach might take longer time and one could run out of time. I will address that question at the end of our fourth question. So yes, most of you must be having this timing issue. Hey, it's a timed exam, you know, and you have so many questions to do. So what do we do with our time? I will talk about that once we finish our fourth question. Okay, so hang on to that. Okay. Before we move on to the next question, I just have a quick question, but I don't want answers from you. This is more for your introspection, okay? Whatever source you use to verify or validate your questions, whether you got it right or not, and when you look into the solutions, whatever source you use, we guarantee that nobody presents as comprehensive details as we do. And we give the reason for each and every error that is there, and we also give the reasons why the correct answer is correct. This kind of feedback that you get adds to your learning. It's a value add, because then you get to understand, then you see clearly with the proper knowledge of concepts and the grammar and the importance of the grammar in your head, that yes, this makes sense and this doesn't make sense. So it is very, very important to have that level of detailed solution at your exposure, so that you can pinpoint as to, okay, this is the place where I made mistake, and there should be no ambiguity about it, that okay, in one sentence this usage works, but in the other sentence it doesn't work. No, it's not like that. There has to be a proper pattern in which the grammar and the logic works in the sentence, and we at EGMAT take all the pain to create those solutions for you for your better learning and understanding. So yeah, that's very, very important. Okay, now understanding the efficacy of the meaning-based approach, we have already seen it for 3 questions. I'm sure by now you do understand how important it is to first look at the logic, because once again, we are talking about a logic, information that is being conveyed. And so the prime ingredient for any information is that it should be logical. And then we use grammar to form that logic, to give that logic a shape. And I shouldn't say none other question, but yes, this is one of the questions in all the OGs that really tests that logical skill of yours. So this is with this last question in this sentence, I guess once more we are going to harp on this point, how logic is so very important for to ace GMAT SC. So quickly, let's do our ritual. Still solving. Somebody marked A. I haven't shown you the question, so please change that and come back to still solving, and let's quickly get some more answers. Quickly, I'm still getting, but we can do better. We can do better. Let's and I'm telling you, this is a very, very interesting question, and I guarantee you there will be a lot of learning through this question. So I tell you guys, do participate in this. All right. Okay, I guess I am ready to show you the question here. So that's your question number 4 on the screen. The first few words are about 5 million acres. The screen might have stabilized by now at your end. So that's your question. Solve it. All the best. Again, keep that logical hat on. All right, we are taking a little longer on this question, and I totally understand that why. This is way more heavy, contextually heavy sentence, but still in the interest of time, let's wrap this up in the next 10 seconds, and I'm going to start my countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Now, rest of you who are still saying, still solving, just choose any answer choice, because it's really about learning. You'll learn a lot from this sentence. So just choose any and then let's proceed. Okay, so here I'm ending my poll. Okay. Now, before we get deeper into this sentence, I want to ask how many of you are 100% sure of your answer choice? Y for yes, N for no. How many of you are? Okay, let's not ask questions. First answer my question. How many of you are confident about your answers here? Okay, so I do see not many of you, but some of you definitely are, which is equally encouraging. And those who are not, even with them, let's deal with this. And I'm telling you, after today, every time you see this question, you would say, oh yeah, this is easy. Okay, let's take a look at this sentence. What are we going to do is we are going to read this sentence slowly, because as I told you, this sentence is pretty context heavy. So we will literally have to break this sentence into pieces to understand what's really going on in this sentence. So about 5 million, okay, here's my pen. There we go. About 5 million acres in the United States have been invaded by leafy spurge. Okay, so we understand a huge tract of land on United States have been covered by this particular entity called leafy spurge. Now, from the name, we can definitely infer that it's a kind of a vegetation, right? So, but the author does not want us to keep guessing, okay? The author takes the pain to describe what leafy spurge is, and he says, or she says, whoever it is, a herbaceous plant from Eurasia. So leafy spurge, it's a herbaceous plant, it's a kind of a plant. It comes from Eurasia with milky sap, and it contains milky sap that gives mouth sores to cattle. Pretty bad, right? Okay. So it gives mouth sores to cattle. Then we understand displacing grasses and other cattle food and rendering rangeland worthless. Now, till this point, the sentence is absolutely fine, right? I'm sure all of you will unanimously agree with me. I don't even need to put that question out to you. You will all understand that till this far, the question is absolutely pretty. No issues, nothing. Things start to become a little muddled towards this point. I really don't know what displacing and rendering is doing at this part of the sentence. Why? Because I understand that when comma plus verb ing modifier is used, it works as an action modifier. So here, displacing is actually modifying that gives mouth sores to cattle and presenting the result of the modified action. If you want more details on how comma plus verb ing modifiers are used, this absolutely critical concept is available in our free trial. And trust me, nobody else teaches modifiers the way EGMAT does. I'm not blowing the trumpet. I'm telling you really the truth, you know, that the way we teach modifiers with the details and with proper understanding of it, nobody else does. So do go through that, okay? So yes, comma plus verb ing modifier, the way it has been used in this sentence, it presents the result of the modified action. In this case, The sentence is actually trying to say that the milky sap gives mouth sores to cattle, and the result of giving mouth sores to cattle, it displaces grasses and other cattle food. Does this cause and effect make sense to you? Can we say that because milky sap give mouth sores to cattle, it displaces grasses and other cattle food? Does this make sense? Let's see some more. Show me some enthusiasm. This is the last question. We are not going to hold you back for longer. Okay, yes. So most of you are saying that it does not make sense. Correct. Absolutely correct. Now, if let's again do that deep diving into sentence. What displaces grass and other cattle food? From what we have from this sentence, what will make sense in displacing grasses and other cattle food? Or what can logically displace, right? Like kind of replace or displace grasses and other cattle food. Leafy spurge, absolutely correct. Even plant is correct because it's the leafy spurge is the only plant that we are talking about in this sentence. So absolutely correct. So see, you don't know what leafy spurge is or what, basically the nuanced knowledge of it, but only by using your logic that, okay, if it is talking about displacing grasses and other cattle food, it can only be leafy spurge. And that's the engagement that we want, the logical engagement with the sentence. Okay. So we understand that displacing grasses must not be connected with milky sap. It must be connected with herbaceous plant. Because the way the sentence is written, this cause and effect is absolutely bogus. Another part, we have two comma plus verb ing modifiers connected by and. Let's check the logical standing of this part. Rendering rangeland worthless. So what is this part saying? That because milky sap gives mouth sores to cattle, the result is that they make, or it makes, the milky sap makes the rangeland, the place, the pasturing grounds basically. The pasturing ground becomes useless. Now, does this meaning make sense? Again, milky sap making the pasturing grounds useless because of the action of giving mouth sores to cattle. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. So let's again, think a little bit more, think a little bit harder here and ask yourself, what can possibly make the rangeland worthless? How the cattle ground or the pasturing grounds can become useless? By leafy spurge, okay, yeah. Displacing grasses. That's exactly what I have been looking for. Absolutely correct. Why? Try to think about it. Leafy spurge has the milky sap which gives mouth sores to cattle, right? But if leafy spurge is displacing grasses and other cattle food, then cattle cannot graze on those grounds because they are not fools. They don't want to live with mouth sores. So if eating leafy spurge gives them mouth sores, then they are not going to eat there. But why the rangeland is becoming worthless? They are becoming useless because it is the displacement of grasses and cattle food by the leafy spurge. Because leafy spurge is displacing all the grass and cattle food, no cattle will go there to eat, and that's why these pasturing ground they become worthless. So actually this action is the indicator is also there, is already there on the screen, that this action is actually the result of the action displacing. Because the grasses and other cattle food are being displaced by leafy spurge, this is the reason why the grazing grounds are becoming useless. Okay, so and all this aspect is already mentioned on the slide. Okay, before I move on to my grammar check and the answer choices, are you all with me in this logic? Do you all understand what's going on in here? And you all agree also, right? Yes, I will take that as yes, because all of you are. So displacing, not modifying the action gives mouth source. Yes, it is doing that. And that's why the meaning is illogical. In fact, both of this, displacing and rendering, both of these are modifying this particular action over here, that it gives mouth sore. And that is precisely the reason why the sentence is illogical. Do you understand? So this is the cause and this is the effect. As we see, sap gives mouth sores to cattle, and this is the effect. That is how the sentence is saying. But that is not what we want, right? Okay. Okay, a herbaceous plant to cattle. So it can, okay, so this avoiding part, something that is extra information, let's avoid it. This is my this is my serious recommendation to all of you. Never analyze the sentence by totally removing a part of the sentence. Never do that, because every single word used in this sentence has a purpose. When you remove chunks of words from the sentence to evaluate, you are killing the context of the sentence. And that is very misleading. That can be very, very misleading. So never ever think like that, okay, let me just do away with this part of the sentence and then analyze it. Never do that. Nobody will tell you that. Okay? So never ever do that. Okay. With this understanding, now let's move on to choice B. And I'm glad to show your results. I hope that you got B correct for the correct reasons, not because, hey, B sounded the best among the rest. I don't want that reply. But from today onwards, after this, you will know why B is right, okay? So let's take a good look at this answer choice. So here we have it. About 5 million acres in the US have been invaded by leafy spurge. All good. A herbaceous plant from Eurasia, absolutely fine. With milky sap, absolutely good. That gives mouth sores to cattle and displaces grasses and other cattle food, rendering rangeland worthless. Okay. Now, read and process. And I know, or I'm guessing, and this is my guess, that most of you, or all those of you who did not choose choice B, you did not go with this choice because you thought that, hey, that is now talking about leafy spurge, that is the herbaceous plant. And this sentence is saying that leafy spurge gives mouth sores to cattle and not the milky sap, because you see this comma over here, basically with milky sap is enclosed between two commas, right? So you thought that's an extra information. You do not take it into consideration while you are analyzing the usage of that. And so you see that, hey, this sentence is, or this answer choice is actually changing the meaning of the sentence, because that is now saying that it is the leafy spurge that is giving the mouth sore. Now, did you think like that? Did you really reject choice B? Because, so I'm talking about those people who did not choose choice B. Because if you did so, then let me tell you that your analysis is not right, because milky sap and leafy spurge are not mutually exclusive. Remember, leafy spurge contains the milky sap. So when the cattle are eating the leafy spurge, the milky sap is getting excreted, and that's how they are getting the mouth sores. But it's not that they lick the milk, they are eating leafy spurge and they are licking the milky sap from somewhere else. No. So it is one and the same to say that the milky the sap in the leafy spurge gives mouth sores or the leafy spurge gives mouth sores. Okay, does this make sense? Why that does not modify milky sap? Okay, that does not modify milky sap because with milky sap is actually enclosed between two commas. So this gives that the liberty to jump over this modifier and talk about this. And this is what I have for you in my next slide. Okay, so I'll talk about that, but let's get over with this part in choice B. So that here is talking about herbaceous plant, which is equal to leafy spurge. So now this sentence is saying that leafy spurge gives mouth sores to cattle, which is right because leafy spurge contains milky sap. So that's fine. Remember how when we were doing the meaning analysis, we did say that, hey, displacing grasses should be connected to leafy spurge and not to milky sap. Choice B exactly does that. It takes displaces to that, and that is taking us to herbaceous plant. So according to choice B, herbaceous plant or leafy spurge displaces grasses and other cattle food. Absolutely logical. We do not deny that logic because that is what we understood from the original sentence. And then with that, our last bit of the sentence also falls into the proper logical arrangement. Now this comma plus verb ing modifier is modifying the preceding action displaces. Because leafy spurge displaces grasses and other cattle food, as a result, the grazing grounds become useless. Okay, that makes sense? Now let's talk about, and let me get rid of all these annotations over here. Okay, so what we are talking about here is why that is not modifying milky sap. Why? Because we have a far away noun modification happening here. Now our course also has this topic covered in great details. In fact, we wrote our very famous article by the very same name. It is available on GMAT Club, one of the most loved and popular articles on GMAT on SC. So these are the conditions that are required for a noun to modify faraway noun, and we see that all these conditions are met in this sentence. With milky sap is modifying herbaceous plant, so we cannot place it anywhere else, and so it gives liberty to that to jump over milky sap and talk about herbaceous plant. So this is absolutely possible. Absolutely possible. Okay. So somebody's asking this. So it's not the milky sap that gives mouth sores, it's the leafy spurge. Again, think about it. I just explained leafy spurge and milky sap are not exclusively different entities. Let me put it in simpler expressions. They are not absolutely separate entities. Leafy spurge contains the milky sap. So it's one and the same thing to say that leafy spurge gives mouth sore or the milky sap gives mouth sore. It's the same thing. Okay. What if? Don't ask what if questions, because you can get into a lot of things, but again, GMAT will never do that because GMAT understands that there are proper rules to be followed, and that's why you see with milky sap in the correct answer choice enclosed in the commas. Okay, because it wants to convey that meaning through this structure, which is only possible with this particular structure that you see in choice B. Okay. All right. With this understanding, now let's take a look, and I'll show all the answer choices. I will, at the end, I will show all the answer choices. Here we have a few examples for you where we have faraway noun modification and simple sentences. You can study them to understand exactly what's going on. Let's go through it quickly. The new 2021 Jeep Mojave with a 12-cylinder engine that guzzles gas is very popular among the campers. Here you don't see any commas, So this that is actually modifying a 12 cylinder engine. But in this sentence, what we have, the new 2021 Jeep Mojave with a 12 cylinder engine, that guzzle gas is very popular. Now here, that is actually talking about Jeep Mojave, and it is absolutely correct to say that a particular model of car is a gas guzzler, right? We can always say that. So here we see that far away noun modification working absolutely perfectly, and this is what is happening in choice B as well. Okay, so here I have two official questions which has this structure. So don't think that far away noun modification is not frequently used. It is actually a very frequently used, it's a very popular structure that we see, especially in complex and difficult questions, just to test your understanding whether you do understand this part or not. Now, we also have the official question ready, the official solution ready for the Emily Dickinson's letters question. And just for FYI, Emily Dickinson's questions is one of the, it's like among top 10 questions that are most frequently searched for on GMAT Club. A lot of people have doubt in that question and they want to understand why the correct answer choice is correct. So Stacy has made this beautifully detailed solution on Emily Dickinson's letter. Please go check it out. The link that I have presented to you will take you to that link. And tomorrow we will be ready with our second solution also on YouTube. So do check them out. I will make this link. Okay, let me just leave it on the page. Okay, there we go. Give me some more time. Okay, so now let's move on to the other answer choices. Okay, we've already spoken about choice B. Here we have choice C. What is wrong with choice C? Again, visualizing everything part by part. 500 acres of United States have been invaded by leafy spurge, a herbaceous plant from Eurasia having milky sap that gives mouth sores to cattle. So this part is fine over here, because with no comma before it, that is now associating with milky sap, and it's already, we already know that this is fine. Milky sap does give mouth sore. However, we have issue over here, and displacing grasses and other cattle food. So at this level, this entity and this entity have been made parallel. Now, visually, if you look at it, grammatically, they look right because you have ing modifier and then another ing modifier. So they should be parallelly correct. Wrong, because parallelism requires logical parallelism as well. Only grammatical parallelism is not enough for a list to be correct. Okay, so this list that we see here, it looks identical grammatically, but logically it is not, because this one presents the feature of, so let me just write it down. It presents the feature of herbaceous plant, but the second displacing presents the action done by the herbaceous plant or leafy spurge or LS. So these two things are not equitable in terms of logic. Okay, so that's why this choice is not correct. And of course, we have issue with this one because rendering should be modifying or presenting the result of this action, and it can only do so if this action is written as a verb. Okay, so choice C is already also incorrect. So those who had confusion between B and C, I hope that it's clear to you now. Let's look at choice D. Choice D has a very blatant error. One of the easiest errors to spot in sentence correction problems, the missing verb. That's the easiest one. Every subject must have a verb, and when the verb is missing, you can totally reject that answer choice and move on, because a sentence cannot stand without a verb. So that's the problem we see. If you look at the sentence structure very carefully, you will see that has it's color coded. That is the subject, it is in blue. 5 million acres is subject, it is blue. That has three verbs with it: gives, displaces, and renders. But 5 million acres does not have any verb associated with it. So this is wrong. It's out. Another thing is that, again, we see this list over here. Milky sap gives mouth sores. Okay, that makes sense. But this does not make sense, and this does not make sense. So again, we see two verbs that have been used for that do not even make sense with their subject, because milky sap neither displaces grasses nor renders the grazing grounds useless. So choice D totally distorts the intended meaning of the sentence. So that is why it is incorrect. In choice E, we again see the same missing verb error. 5 million acres does not have its verb. Rest, that has milky sap is fine. Giving mouth sores to cattle is fine. But displacing again is violating aspect 3. The relationship between milky sap and displacing just does not stand, because it is not the milky sap that displaces grasses. It's the leafy spurge that displaces grasses, and hence this part also gets invalidated in the context of the sentence. Okay, so choice E is also incorrect. So, okay. So here we go. Let's do the observations. This particular sentence was very difficult because it was really, really context heavy. And 85% of the sentence was underlined. So you couldn't really apply a splits method with this one. You would just get confused with all that splits method, because you wouldn't be able to figure out as to how to make the splits at the first place. So the only thing that helped us go through this sentence correctly is keep thinking. Yes, with this question we had to think harder because the context was heavy, and we had to draw certain inferences over here to understand the logical intended meaning. But once we did that, we exactly knew what we had to choose from the given answer choices. Okay, so with this, let me take the pulse of the class. Anything, are you all clear about this one? I'll just show you the question once again because somebody wanted to see all the answer choices. All clear? Do you guys all understand what's going on? Yes, very complex sentence. I totally understand that. But once again, just look at the beauty of this sentence, how beautifully the logic has been played in this sentence. And mind you, difficult questions do not play so much with grammar. They make the logic very complex and convoluted for you to understand, hey, what's going on? And that's what makes questions difficult. Grammatical errors, if you're good with your concepts, you'll be able to see what's going on. Oh yeah, I can identify this grammar error. But if you have not been diligent with the grammar, with the logic of the original sentence, chances are very high that any meaning distortion in any of the answer choices will miss your attention. Okay? So anything else? Is this question considered a yes, it definitely is considered a hard question. Why does milky sap modify plant and not Eurasia? Can Eurasia have milky sap? Does that make sense? Always, whenever you are in doubt, just ask yourself, does that make sense? That's your mantra to go with SC questions. Answer that question to me. Let me see who's asked that question. Jillian. So can you tell me, does it make sense to say that Eurasia, which you understand, it's a geographical location, can it have milky sap? No, it doesn't. It just doesn't make sense to say that. So the only logical connection that we can make with milky sap is a herbaceous plant. Okay? So with this, we have come to the end of our fourth question. And now I will invite Rajat back in the session to take care of the last part. So Rajat, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shraddha. And let me just clear the polls up. And I think just to kind of add to what Shraddha was saying with regards to logic in SCA, I want to give you guys another practice question. This is a question that we posted, we posted last week on our YouTube channel, and this was a competition I think about 40 odd people participated in it. You can see some great solutions to that question, really detailed solutions, and there was a prize with regards to this, to say, hey, if you answer this question correctly and if your analysis is clear, then one person would get full access to GMAT Online for 1 week. This question, also the second question, which is below Emily Dickinson's letters on the top right hand corner, it also plays on that. Is that a logical piece? So definitely try that question now. The video solution to that question, in fact, that's created by Shraddha. It's also on our YouTube channel. So yeah, with that, let's kind of talk about how do you get to that 90th percentile. And one thing, hopefully, that you guys appreciate right now is to get to that 90th percentile, you can't get there by just grammar. You've got to focus on meaning. Okay. Now let's talk about why do you need to focus on meaning. But before that, let's just look at some success stories of people who used to focus on grammar and then shifted their focus on meaning because they kind of recognized grammar would not get them to where they wanted to be. So there's one student, Dr. Rohit Singh Malan, he got into Kellogg, and what he said is, hey, prior to using the meaning-based approach. So this guy is someone who had, prior to taking his first attempt, had cleared the IAS exam in India, which is arguably the most competitive exam that exists in India. And he scored a V27, which is about 50th percentile on verbal. And he said prior to using the meaning-based approach, he was always lost in 2 or 3 answer choices. Why? Because all of them felt right. He didn't have a solid grounds to reject those. And then he said once he started using the meaning-based approach, he kind of was able to identify the sentence. And he said, I could see the genesis of the sentence. I could see its various appendages. And he was rejecting answer choices on solid grounds. Actually, he improved from V32 to V42 over there. But again, nevertheless, going from that 60th percentile over here to that 96th percentile over here is incredible improvement. There's another guy who got into GSB Chicago as well as Columbia. He said the meaning-based approach is a game changer. Before that, this guy is a native speaker of the language. He was educated in Canada. He's been working in the US for the last decade or so. And according to him, he says, when you get to that 700 level questions, grammar is not going to be a deciding factor because you'd always have 2 options left. The only way you'd be able to get to the correct answer in 90 seconds is by focusing on that intended meaning. Why? Because once you focus on intended meaning, you don't have to worry as much about the rules of grammar. Why? Because you focus way more on logic. So let's talk about this. How many of you feel like that, hey, post this, you're going to give the meaning-based approach a try? Just a show of yes, no over here. Okay, perfect. That's wonderful. I'm really glad to see that. So give that meaning-based approach a try. The other piece is go check out the concepts in the free trial. Why? Because they're going to give you that foundation that you need to apply that meaning-based approach. Now, one thing that I want you to take from here is when it comes to acing GMAT sentence correction, it is to a certain degree about grammar, but more than grammar, the key is, and which is also the key to meaning that you would have observed over here, is sentence structure. So a lot of people think GMAT SC is about, subject verb, verbs, modifiers, pronouns, tenses, lists and parallelism and comparisons. Yes, it is about that. But when you look at those 7 error types, if you just look at them in isolation, you'd probably be doing 30% of what is required to get to excel in sentence correction, what you also have to look at is sentence structure. So if I were to draw a matrix, these sentence structures are these rows where you have S1, S2, S3, S4, and these 7 error types are these columns over here. And together they lead to about 200 cells. And this is kind of where we call them acing. GMAT SC is about acing these 200 concepts, which is a matrix of sentence structures and these concepts over here. And you've kind of witnessed some of it in this webinar where, as you were solving these questions, you saw various sentence structures. In the leafy spurge question, you saw multiple sentence structures were there, and how they a different sentence structure would lead to a different meaning that the sentence would communicate. And so when it comes to getting to that 90th percentile or 96th percentile or 99th percentile, you've got to be able to identify. Yes. So when you say 200 concepts, it's essentially a matrix of these sentence structures with the core concepts over there. And so the beauty of this is it's not 200 distinct concepts over there. They're very related. There's a lot of logic that goes in it. So that's what makes them. If you approach them in a logical way, that's what makes learning easier. If you don't approach them in a logical way, then essentially you are going to learn them as idioms, where you say, hey, to, verb, and all of those things. Those are, you kind of learn them as idioms, you learn them as rules, and you learn them as rules. You can't apply them because you're not focused on the meaning over there. Can you see this in matrix? No, you can't, because it's not a neat matrix, but you can see them in progression over here in the course. And which is where, if you're an EGMAT student, how many of your EGMAT students over here? How many of your EGMAT students here? Yes. As you've gone through the course, can you really experience the level of complexity in sentence structures in application files, and practice quizzes go up as you go from subject verb to verbs, verbs to tenses, tenses to pronouns, right? That's the complexity of sentence structures, and that's where you see this. And for example, when you see verb ed forms, the distinction between verbs and modifiers, that's something that you really see within modifiers as well. And their usage as verbs or verb ed forms versus usage as modifiers is something that you see as a part of sentence structure over there. Cases where noun modifiers can modify slightly far away nouns, those come in as sentence structures in this case. The various usages of verb ing modifiers. So you know this as a concept, but in different sentence structures, how is it used? In some cases, you just have one verb ing modifier and you have to decide whether it's used logically. In certain cases, they come in as lists over here, and in certain cases, those lists are logical. In other cases, they're not logical. So even though grammatically this is correct, logically, this may not be correct. In fact, in the practice question in the top number 2, you're going to see something like that over here. So the key to getting there is focusing on this meaning-based approach so that you can identify cases where, hey, you may have an incorrect usage of verb ing modifier, grammatically incorrect in the original sentence, but then it's corrected by using a noun plus noun modifier, which in turn communicates the same meaning and stuff. So when you get to that level, that's when you get once you build that understanding, that's when you get to that level where you can identify these change in structures from the original sentence, which is incorrect, to the correct answer choice while keeping the meaning the same. Okay. So bottom line is, to get to this, you've got to learn these concepts. Some of these will come very naturally to you, others won't. So those that don't come naturally, you need to focus on refining those. And then you need to do targeted practice so that you get to that 90th percentile level. Remember, getting to that 90th percentile level is not just about learning these, it's about being better than others over there. And if you're EGMAT students, you've been getting this feedback over here. Throughout the course, just the course, not Scholaranium, you engage with about 500 examples as well as exercise questions, and you've been getting feedback over there. Okay, is there a matrix for these 200 concepts? No, there isn't a matrix. Why? Because they're intertwined with sentence structures. If we just gave you the matrix, you'd probably see it limit to that. We kind of call it the core 200 concepts because these are the ones which are most often tested. And if you know these, there are a few others which are not as often tested, but you'd get to them because if you can master these 200, in fact, if you master the first 100, the other ones are logical derivations of those. But some of these are over here that you can really see that. So again, when I say concepts, this is a matrix over here. Now, how many of you have gotten feedback over here, for those of you e-GMAT students, where you've gone through an application file and we've said, hey, go repeat that file? How many of you have gotten feedback where you've done poorly and we've said, hey, go back, repeat it, please don't let it go? Okay. And that's the feedback. If you pay heed to that feedback, you fix your errors right then and there. And once you fix your errors right then and there, that's when you do the learning part right. When you do that learning part right, that's when you do the cementing correct. In fact, again, as you go to our YouTube channel, we have and if you search e-GMAT data and methods, you would really see accounts of some users who've gotten to that 740, 760 score, and you'll really see how they've gone through certain concept files again and again and again. And the reason why they've gone to it is because the feedback told them that, hey, you've not understood this well. And it's when you fix those things right then and there, that's when you excel. Okay. So the other piece which is really important is you should Google e-GMAT data and methods. e-GMAT and then data and methods. Okay, you'd see the data that for these people. You'll see how they've gone through certain application files again. Now, each one of them will go through certain application files twice or thrice. Why? Because, as I said, this refinement over here that we talked about is very personal to each one of you. So some people who score 760 go through modifies application file 2. They go through tenses files twice. They go through comparisons. Others go through parallelism. Some of them need to go through subject verb make sense again. So that's the personalization that is really important over there. The other piece which is there is that some people really say, "Oh, I'm really good at getting good scores in concepts. I'm not going to worry about getting good scores in application. Hey, if I get a score of 60% in application, that's just as good." Don't be that person. Why? Because, hey, just learning concepts gets you to 50th percentile. Mastering application gets you to that 90th percentile, which is why we give you feedback about 23 times in the course. This is even before you start practicing in Scholarium on your ability to apply concepts. Okay, and you can really see the frequency of feedback depends on how complex something is. Modifiers is our biggest module, where you get this feedback 5 times. Parallelism and comparison 3 and 4 times. And again, this is in addition to the concept level personalized feedback that you get. Sometimes when you do poorly, you see personal videos that come from Payal in your inboxes asking you to revise. Have you seen those personal videos that come to your inbox where Payal says you've got to revise this right then and there? And similarly, some of you may have seen those videos from me when you've done well on the new quant course over there. Please understand that those we've done that, codified that feedback so that you do course correction right here, or right where you need. So if you've not faltered, you won't see it. But if you've, and I think one thing which we want to implement is giving you a pat on the back. We don't do enough of that. But where you falter, we definitely send you videos saying you're faltering, my friend. Go revise this. Okay. And let's just to tell you some of how this is done. This is just one of our smallest modules, the subject verb module over here for this guy who scored 730. So not a terribly high verbal score over here, V38, but we just really tell you how this feedback is there. Now, when you're learning subject verb over here, you're evaluated in it right then and there. This time is tracked. So even though you see just these 2 metrics in subject verb, we get about 50 metrics internally. Every slide, every click you make is tracked internally in the system. This is something that we built on our own as a technology. No other test prep company has this technology. To license this technology, you probably need to pay. It's a standard that we've coded, and the license costs about $100,000 just to do it, which is why no one else does it. But because we have our own technology team, we build this in-house. And what this allows us to do is that allows us to track how much time you've spent. So for those of you e-GMAT students, if you've done subject verb agree in number, your time over here is probably not going to be 21 minutes. It could be 15, it could be 30, depending on whether you revised or whether you went through certain slides. But look at a few things here. So SV application over here. This guy, even though he scored 60%, he spent a ton of time revising. We can track this. Yes, 47 minutes for this guy, and I think you're talking about subject verb agree number. Yes, you can really see that. The beauty of that feedback is when you move forward with a solid understanding, and we can see that over here. Why? Because right in the next quiz, he scored 100%. You could not have scored 100% had he not corrected those errors. Okay. You don't see these OG quizzes. This is an old screenshot anymore. Why? Because this has now moved to OG Scholaranium. So in this case, and again, the same thing is over here. In verbs, which is now a slightly longer module, again, you can see that he scored 64% in verbs practice quiz. Again, good scores over here, which means good foundation. Verb sequencing is a complex concept. You can see 64 minutes spent over here. Verbs application, complex concept. But over here, he scored 64%. And he spent 9 minutes, but later on he went on and revised these things, which is why he got 100%. How did we know he revised these things? We looked at this file and we could see these flags over here where he had bookmarked these questions for revision. So outside of the system, in his bookmarked area, he revised this. For those of you who don't know that we have this bookmark feature, we do. It's all collated. Please make sure you do that. Again, very similar feedback. When you go to our YouTube channel, you read some of this, you're going to really find something which is very similar. That hey, it's the application that matters. It's applying that approach consistently that matters. One of the other things that I would say is, initially when you start this approach, you are going to take longer. You might end up taking 2.5, 3 minutes to answer a question, and some of you might be worried. How many of you were worried when you took 3 minutes to answer a question? You say, hey man, I've got to look at this. I understand that you're worried. Don't bother. Trust me that your time to answer questions is going to go down over there. And if you don't want to trust me, go to GMAT Club, look at all the reviews that are there for verbal. Look at the frequency of reviews in the last 2 months. Just compare those numbers over there. And you would find when it comes to verbal, we've accounted for 80% of all reviews in the last 2 months. Don't bother about the 2,000 odd reviews that are there. Forget about that. Just the last 2 months. And you can do the 2 months prior to that, you're going to find a similar story repeated. You go 2 months prior to that, very similar story repeated. And you're going to see stuff which is very similar, where people really will talk about this meaning-based approach. They will talk about pre-thinking. They will talk about reading strategies. And in the last 2 months, they will have talked about the new quant course as well, and how its architecture just makes learning so much simple. So do that, and definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel. Why? Because we post 2 to 3 success stories every week. And just to really compare and contrast that with some of the other YouTube channels, most of the YouTube channels, whether it's TTP, whether it's Crack Verbal, whether it's Manhattan, probably have 10 success stories overall. Why? Because they would say their students don't provide that. Our students are passionate enough that they don't have a problem giving interviews on YouTube. And that's why we have close to 150 over there. Again, I want to make sure each one of you aims for that 750, 760, 770 score. Why? Because there's a lot at stake. It's not just about studying at Ross or Wharton or Harvard or even Ohio Fisher or saving that scholarship money. It's about what does that MBA do for you over here. So with that, hopefully the first 2 portions told you what that approach was. I know both Shraddha and Stacy are very diligent. They're super detail oriented. They love answering students' questions. And hopefully this last piece motivated you to work hard. It's not easy. I will tell you right then and there. Okay, it is not easy to get a 730, which is why it's 97th percentile. Especially for those of you who are working professionals, you will have to make sacrifices. There will be days when your brain will tell you it's very difficult. There will be days where you would want to take some rest. But trust me, getting a good GMAT score, keeping your spirits up, just putting in this effort for 2 months is probably one of the best investments you're going to make. That's going to change your life. So do that over there. If you're not a paid student, make sure you check the free trial out. If you are a paid student, please follow the meaning-based approach. If you have doubts, write to us. Okay. Focus on achieving excellence. A lot of people really, and this is one of the most common questions that I get. How long does it take to complete your course? I don't care if you complete the course, frankly. I care if you get to that 730 score. And to get to that 730 score, you may need to focus just on a few subsections, and you may not need to focus on a few subsections at all. Why? Because you're naturally good at it. Let us help you build that study plan. But whatever you study, focus on achieving that excellence. Tell yourself that. It's just knowing things is not going to cut it for you. Okay. And again, tell yourself, when you succeed, when you go to a Wharton, when you go to a Ross, when you go to a Kellogg, you're not just doing this for you. How many of you over here decided to do an MBA because your colleague was able to do it, or because your colleague got into this, or because your senior got into a top B school? How many of you are amongst those folks? Anyone over here who's motivated by others to really say, hey, if this guy got here and I can see what he's doing, I should be able to do this as well. How many of you, any one of you is motivated by others over here? Nobody. Okay, I got one person. Let's see if there are a few other people who really said, hey, they're seniors. And so you're going to be the same one. I mean, imagine this. Every person who succeeds motivates 5 or 6 others. It's how we actually grow as individuals. So you're not doing this just for yourself. You're also doing this for all those people who look up to you. Maybe it's your younger cousins, or maybe it's people who work with you. Maybe it's your juniors in this case. So when it just seems like, hey, studying is becoming too tough, tell your brain that, because otherwise your brain will ask you to slow down. Okay. With that, I want to thank you guys for joining me today. It was a pleasure hosting this this session. Let me share the session PDF. You can download that over here. And if there's any other question, first of all, if you could get feedback on the session for Stacy and Shraddha, that'd be really great. And then if you want to see some of the success stories that we talked about, you can see a few of these success stories over here. In fact, this number 4, Garima, she just wrote to me about 10 minutes back saying that she got into ISB. If you're connected with me on my LinkedIn, you're going to see that email on my LinkedIn. Okay. Stacy and Shraddha, please feedback on them. That'd be really great. I think they'd appreciate that. They did most of the work. I just came in and did a bunch of mumbo jumbo, but feedback on Stacy and Shraddha would be appreciated. And again, if you're still looking for that study plan, click on number 1, get a personalized study plan. If you're looking to figure out what your starting score is, click on Sigma X, and then you can do RC webinar. You can register for the RC webinar by clicking on number 3. Connect with me on my LinkedIn by clicking on number 4, and then the NP webinar, which is tomorrow on number 5. Okay. Lastly, we are running our beginning of the month discounts, which we typically go on. They typically go on till the 1st. So if you're looking to purchase a course, this is the best time to purchase one. This is when we have the best discounts out there. So yeah. If you have any questions, you can write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com and be happy to address those. Okay. With that, guys, thank you very much. And I will see you guys in the number properties webinar tomorrow. Thank you and have a great day.